Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Everyday Equity, Everyday Ways to Make a Change. I'm your host, Pooja Kotari, founder of Boundless Awareness, where we provide anti-bias, anti-oppression workshops. With me today, I'm so excited for this conversation. Judy Tsuei is a leadership coach, author, podcaster, entrepreneur, and like 100 million other things. I cannot wait for you to hear from her, but why don't I pass it to Judy? Please expound on like all the things that you do. Let us
Well,
know
the
who you are.
same. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. You're such a beautiful light in the world, and I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing. I always say that, I have a branding and marketing agency where we focus on working with thought leaders and visionaries and really building your personal brand. And I always say, like, my gift has always been storytelling, but the true gift that I get to offer the world is to support individuals like you and other people who are doing really meaningful work in the world that I feel like, maybe I don't have the capacity or the bandwidth or the expertise to do, but I'm so grateful to be even a part of it. So thank you for having me here. Yeah, I do a bajillion different things. I would say first and foremost, the thing that's been on my mind is being a mom. I have a 10-year-old daughter who's feisty, and yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I think I'm so grateful for community where we get to be honest and real. And I think that only in that opportunity can we, really shift and expand. And so being a mom is one of the things that I am navigating. And I also do neurolinguistic programming coaching. So what I love about it is I explored every healing modality under the sun. I was raised with immigrant parents who really came at it from an authoritarian scarcity standpoint. And because of that, they instilled a lot of beliefs in me that I ended up having an eating disorder that I battled for like 15 plus years and just kept running around the world, literally trying to run away from myself, only to find myself on the other side of the world living in China and being like, dang it, there's nowhere else to go. I'm here. I'm going to have to deal with my own stuff. And so
Mm.
going through all of the different healing modalities, I'm so grateful for it. And I'm a huge advocate for mental and emotional health and wellness and removing any shame or stigma or taboo around that, especially in communities of color.
Yeah.
Um, and NLP has been one of like the fastest, most effective routes that I've ever seen for really creating amazing transformation in your life. I always like to say, like, nobody's got time to like, keep digging through like all of the things when there's like more stuff in life that keeps happening. So it's one of the reasons that I'm working on my book, How to Disappoint Your Parents in 10 Shameless Steps, a modern Asian American guide, and why I also have a podcast called, it's got the F word in it and, F saving face, because I just want people to not feel bad for being human and for being in circumstances or situations beyond your control, and then the choices that we get to make moving forward. So that was everything in a nutshell.
Yeah, there's so much to break down. I want to talk about, okay, so here we have the podcast for those who can read our banner at the bottom. And also, if you go to judy-tsui.kit.com/imposter, you can also get a free resource on understanding imposter syndrome, especially for women of color.
Mhm.
Um, can we talk a little bit first on NLP for those people who are not as aware of it? Can you give an example of the benefits of neurolinguistic programming?
Yeah, absolutely. So NLP, it's known as a pattern interrupt, and it's also modeling excellence. So basically, it's finding anybody who's ever done anything with exceptional results, and then figuring out what was their process to get there, how did they do that, and how can we replicate those processes so then we can also create those exceptional results. And you can do it in 6 key areas of life. And usually, people come for career or personal growth, but there's also relationship. There's also physical health, all of these things. And so there's all these techniques that work with your unconscious mind. And so, we've probably all seen that iceberg that like your conscious mind is at like the very tip and everything else is down below that. But I think that we don't fully understand that all behavior, learning, and change comes from your unconscious mind. So you can conscious mind and think your way out of like, or try to think your way out of a bunch of things. But the real change and the real sustainability is going to come from your unconscious mind, whether or not that's aligned with what your conscious mind wants to do. So your unconscious mind wants to keep you safe. It's
Yeah.
responsible for so many things about you, and it's created values in each of the key areas of life. And I always like to explain to people, like, anytime that you've set a goal but you're not seeing it show up in your physical reality, or you're finding any sort of like hesitation or resistance to achieving that goal, there's something that's happening in your unconscious mind that's resistant, and we need to understand what that is. And we are driven by our top 5 core values in any key area of life. Now, you can try to figure out what those core values are. But every time that I work with clients, we do these breakthrough sessions where the first day I ask you all of these questions to elicit your core values. And then after we do all the clearing work on the second day, we do that exercise again. And inevitably, there's a word that shows up that's like their number one core value that didn't even show up in the first day, or all of the values rearrange. And so anything that goes below like the top 5, you're not going to act on. And so it's one of the reasons why a lot of people will say, like, I want to make a lot of money. And then you're not experiencing these vast volumes of wealth. And there's something in you that doesn't have the right definition of what that means. And so all of these techniques are designed to work so rapidly with your unconscious mind. It's designed to get your conscious mind out of the way, and then the results that you see become so integrated into your life that it just feels completely natural and normal, but they're so profound. And people will say, like, I had a trigger that was like a 10, now it's at a 0. And I take copious notes on day 1. So I ask about all your limiting beliefs, all of the things that are holding you back, anything that's a challenge. And then after we do the clearing work, I go back and I ask you, like, I want you to now rate from a scale of like 0 to 10. Tell me how these statements feel. And everyone's always like, I didn't say that. I'm like, well, I recorded the call day 1. So yes, you can go back and see. But they're like, no, like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, yeah, because we did all the clearing work. And so now it's not anything to you anymore. And I always love that, because it's like proof right there in front of me to be like, that really worked. So big explanation for that.
Yeah, no, but that's very clear and actually very detailed. So I really appreciate that. And it's very, very compelling. Um, the other thing that you started off by saying is the storytelling.
Hmm.
And, as an entrepreneur, um, as a person who, when you're in it, like when I'm doing boundless awareness work, I'm not thinking like, okay, how do I market this? How do I tell my story or tell the story of the change
Mm.
that I create? It's impossible to do all of the jobs that you have to do as a business owner,
Mm.
and I find this aspect of your work so comforting because it's like, okay, I can. Yes, it's my story, and yes, it's selling, kind of um, the change that I see, but I can't do that myself. And if I could export that to somebody who could like take what I do and just really like
Mhm.
distill it
Yeah.
and make it so compelling, it's like such a comforting thought. Can you tell us and this audience like more about that storytelling aspect, how you get like deep into it and telling someone else's story?
Yeah, I love that. So I used to be a yoga teacher in my many, many lifetimes. One of my friends has said, like, I don't know how many lifetimes you've lived. Like, no big deal. There was just another career switch. But I used to be a yoga teacher. And the training program that I did was really rooted in spirituality. In fact, I live in San Diego. So I live right down the street from the Self Realization Fellowship, which is where Yogananda, like, if you ever read that autobiography of a yogi book, that was his ashram. It overlooks the ocean. It's very beautiful. And so the yogi who I learned from used to be a monk in the SRF. And so we had an opportunity to really understand like the multiple levels and layers of a human being. And I think we always think that the conscious mind is going to be the safest space, especially if you were raised with, immigrant parents or anybody who is in that survivalist mentality. You think you can think your way out of it, and you can figure it out. You can rationalize it. What's interesting is our unconscious minds, I'm just going to go back to that a little bit. Every single second, we're bombarded by 2 million bits of information. Our conscious mind can only take 126 of that. So 2 million versus 126. So that 126 that you're focused on, which is based on all of your previous lifetime up until now, That's what's creating your reality. So if I told you that we were standing in a room and every single second 2 million toothpicks were being dropped on the ground and you're picking up 126, if I told you if you drop these 126, you pick up this 126 over here, you're going to have a completely different reality, a completely different experience of life. And so what I do when I am talking to someone and when I'm interviewing someone, and I've been doing this with like thousands of people, definitely over Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, is what I start to hear people say to me is the subtext underneath what they're actually trying to convey. So our rational minds, we think that's the safe
Mhm.
space. It's the only part that like has processed through some of what we understand. And so ironically and like counterintuitively, that's not the safest place for you to be. The safest place for you to be is to like be more in your body, more in your awareness, more in the all of
Mhm.
you. And so if you allow that to come forward, that's where your purpose is going to come through. That's where all of the things you actually want to say are going to shine through. So when I used to interview people, it felt like to me what was actually happening is I could hear what they actually wanted to say underneath it. And so that's what I would start responding to. And whenever I create a brand deck or whenever I, present any of the things that represent you and who you are, I'm responding to that. And then that's why people are always like, I always joke, like, it's totally natural to cry around me. People cry around me all the time. And it's because people feel seen, they
Yeah.
feel heard, and the clarity, I mean, even from a rational perspective, being able to have the words to be able to express out into the world what it is that you're trying to do and who you're trying to talk to and all these things, there's so much clarity and freedom and confidence around that. And I think, like, kind of going back to what I was saying, like, the first role that I have is being a parent, it's being a mom. I try my best to give my daughter the words that she needs to advocate for herself in any situation because I'm a divorced parent. So I'm not there half of the time in her life. I don't know what's happening there. And so the only thing that I can do is to help prepare her. And so the more that we have words to be able to advocate for ourselves, for our purpose, for our greatness, then the more that we enter into communication with other people. And NLP, like a lot of people use it for not just mindset stuff, but also for like better communication and, even sales is because this is to create more rapport and relationships. It's helpful to understand that languaging is a big part of that. So the way that I define something may be completely different than the way that you define it. We can respect each other's model of the world, but we need to understand what the definitions of those words are and then how to articulate what it is. So,
Mm,
yes.
completely, completely. So you bring that back into storytelling by can you tell us, yeah, how
Yeah,
does that
so
get
I ask you all these questions, and then I get a sense of who you are and what you wanna say and what it is that you wanna do. And then after that, like, really distilling the essence, then finding the words that are in your right tone of voice, in the right, like, phrasing that you use, in the things that feel comfortable coming out of your mouth. All of that stuff is so much easier once you have, like, the foundation and the core. And so once
Yeah,
you understand, like, what your unique selling points are, your unique selling proposition, your mission, your vision, your values, everything else just is like the filling in of that picture. And like I know people have said a lot, no one's really reinventing the wheel. No one's, like kind of like coming up with something that's never been done before, except for like maybe AI. Like I would say like that's probably not been done before, but it's still based on language modeling. It's still based on what we
yeah,
know as humanity. Um, and so I always like to say, like, in the end, what I help you create, it has to be aligned with your essence because it will always be the essence of you that
yes,
distinguishes you from anybody else doing anything similar. People are going to
right.
gravitate towards you,
Mm,
and that's what you want to be able to capture.
amazing, amazing. It's true. I've tried to do so many things for my business, and when it feels like
Yeah,
why is this feeling like I'm in front of a camera, like why does it feel like so much effort, or like this doesn't feel like me, or
yeah,
I'm now like why do I need a script? Like I know exactly what I do, but like all of a sudden it's like all blocked.
yeah, yeah.
And I totally, yeah, see the benefit and your approach to this. um I want to ask you about your personal experiences or moments that sparked your commitment to create all of this positive change in your community.
Mm.
Um, What was it like growing up? Why do you want to see positive impacts in your community? Why are you so committed to that? Tell us a little bit about personally what it means to you.
Yeah. So I grew up as the black sheep of the family. I'm the eldest of four. I helped raise my three younger siblings, but I was not at all the right fit for the family I grew up in. And because of that, I incurred a lot of emotional abuse and like physical abuse because I just couldn't, I naturally, my mom used to say this to me all the time: you laugh too loud, you talk too loud, you walk too loud. Like everything about me was too much for my family of origin. There's a really beautiful myth story, kind of like it's from Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and it's in the book Women Who Run with the Wolves, and it's called The Mistaken Zygote. So the story is that, like, there's this stork with like this little baby who's so excited and like getting ready to bring you to your family, and you're so excited that you jump out of the basket, and so you land in a family that is not the one that you were destined for, and the one you were destined for was right down the road. And so you always saw that family down the road and you were like, oh, like that just seems like who I would get along with. Like those are my people. And then over here, you're like, you were always the one who was just, the one that they tried to contain and make smaller because it wasn't aligned with everything that they were, the fabric of who they were. And so that story, when I heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, that was my childhood. Like that was me. And so even when I was little, like very, very young, I always had the sense there's a reason that I'm in this family. There's a reason that I'm here. I don't know what it is. I know it's to make a better impact on the world. So, whatever it is that I have to go through to get to that point, I know there's a reason for it. And I just don't know why. And ever since I was little, like the sense of connection to something greater, it was not survival, kind of like telling myself these things to like get through this really tough childhood, because that's what my eating disorder was for. Like that I was like, that's a tactical skill that I use to try to survive like chaos and like control and all that kind of stuff. But this other feeling was just like a really deep knowing. And so as I grew up, I just had such compassion for anybody who was ever the underdog, anybody who was ever misunderstood, anybody who was not built in the same way that somebody else around them, was trying to get them to fit into. And that is like why I'm such an advocate, and just the fact that like I could see what the effect of when someone could not access mental and emotional support. And I'm not just saying like going to a therapist. I'm like any sort of support, any sort of community,
Mm,
any sort of being able to talk to someone and being you and all of that kind of stuff. And so I firsthand experienced like hurt people hurt people. And so my way of, I think, changing the world is just to reduce that level of hurt by helping people heal. And so like, how can we stop that intergenerational trauma? How can we, and I'm not perfect by it in any means, but like,
yeah.
yeah, like I think that that's why.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a whole lot of sense.
Mhm.
Um, can you share, how the link of um, kind of like the innate, inherent goal you have of creating positive change in your communities link up to your understanding of equity and social justice? Um, and can you talk a little bit about your work with like women of color founders and how you integrate these two um, your
Yeah.
work?
I mean, I think for a lot of us, like if you're the first generation of people who, made all these sacrifices to get here, you're like trying to navigate this world and the one that they came from. And so there is so much of that survivalist mentality. So it wasn't until I got older, I mean, like I'm talking my like late 30s, early 40s, where I was like, wait a minute. I've just been trying to like hustle and grind to get to like do good and right. And I didn't have the luxury to stop and question, wait, is this system even fair? Like, or like, why am I participating in this? And so I
Mm,
started realizing that a lot of people, once they got to a certain point, were like, wait a minute. like, I just need to take a moment to like examine, how the structure of things are. And then I think for so many of us who've experienced microaggressions or overt aggressions and then just like shoving it down just to like be able to like sustain and like be in the world. So once that all started bubbling up, I was like, wait a minute. I have the opportunity to do something different. I have my own business. I get to choose what it is that I want to do. I get to align to the things that are important to me. And so it's time for me to do better and do things that are going to make an impact, however big or small, in whatever way I can. And
Mhm.
I think that's why I'm also so passionate about working with women of color. Is not only have I worked with person after person who has accolades up the wazoo and not at all highlighting them or sharing them, any little bit that I can do to just amplify that voice so that it
Yeah.
becomes a bit louder, and so other people can see and hear and, be inspired by that example. I don't know, like the huge, all of the other things that are happening in the world, it can all seem so overwhelming. um, and one of the things that I come back to is like, I had a therapist who used to always say, when you're not organized on the inside, you try to organize everything on the outside.
Mm.
And that's an exhausting feat because you
Mm.
cannot control everything outside. So yeah. So it made me really go in and be like, okay, what can I do? What can I
Yeah.
do? And I think that that's, so my definition of like equity and social justice is doing what I can to amplify the amazing people who I know who are doing good work in the world and the way that the world needs now.
In fact, the more organized you are on the inside, the less control you need on the outside.
100%. Yeah, which is weird because again, I think it's like that counterintuitive thing of like your conscious mind is not the most intelligent part of you. It's like all of the other knowing that science has actually proven. I
That's
mean, like,
right.
yeah, like there's a book that I love and it's all about light coming in through your eyes and how much information you're taking. And that's what informs your intuition and all of that kind of stuff. Because, like, again, your conscious mind can only take like a little smidge, but all of the rest of that data has to go somewhere. Where's it going
Mm.
to go? So, yeah. I think also what you were talking about when you and I got on our first call, just to kind of talk about this interview, we talked about, our kiddos and talked about like my daughter is way more fierce and vocal than I ever was at her age. And part of that, I think, is we become as a general whole more acceptable or more open to that, more understanding that like bullying exists and like all of those kinds of things. And the other part is like, I've just continued to, again, advocate and give her the words that she needs and to understand, this is the world that we live in. We live in a predominantly white neighborhood. You are made of two different races and two different ethnicities. You're going to need to navigate the world in ways that I've not experienced. What can I do to support you? And like when she moved from her private school to her public school, there was a little kid, they were in third grade, and he was like, I know you're Asian because you have slanty eyes. There's no full Asian kid in her school. They're all like half. And she was like, that's offensive. And he was like, no, it's not. And she's like, yes, yes, it is. So I'm just thinking about my daughter being in a new school, trying to make new friends,
Yeah.
looking up for herself. And then her really good friend who she had just made laughed as well and said, oh, no, it's not. And she looked at her friend and was like, yes, it is. And I was just like, that's way more than I could have ever done at that age. And then I offered like, do you want to talk about it? Because here's the thing, I didn't want to make something right or wrong and put a judgment to it because the judgment removes the asking of questions and the possibilities that could happen.
Mhm.
I asked her, what would you like to do? Here's the thing, that little kid may not know that that was offensive. However, if he says that to somebody else in the future and he says it to the wrong person, their response may not be as generous as yours was or whatnot, and he could get himself in trouble. So what would you like to do? And she thought about it. She wanted to go talk to the teacher. And I rehearsed it with her and I asked, did you want me to come with you to support? She's like, I got it. And so she went and like did it. And it was just, I was very impressed. And she continues to inspire me to see, we'll see change can happen. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, yeah, I remember you telling me this, and I mean, it's because of you. I mean, whatever you make possible,
Mhm.
whatever we make possible as parents is goes such a long way.
Mhm.
And gosh, I just like became 8 years old again when you were telling this story and thinking about all the bullying that happened to me.
Right?
And there's no way I could
Yeah.
have been in a new school and be like, no, this is the boundary. I'm new and this is as far as you can get with me.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no. Um,
It's very, very inspiring, very cool. We can all do that. We can all do it. We can do it even if we're in our 40s. We can still put that line down and say, "No, you don't
yeah,
talk to me like
yeah, totally.
that." Okay, so for the with the few minutes, I have so many, like, things that I wanna talk about. Um, so I'm just gonna choose, like, 1 or 2 more questions to ask you. Okay, how about this one? Something concrete, actionable, which I mean, you literally just gave us an actionable step, but that you took with your own kiddo. But um, actionable steps that listeners can take to promote equity in their immediate environment.
Yes. I feel like it always comes down well, okay, so one of the things that I have been loving is, asking questions, not letting I think that we ask questions and we think we need to figure out the answer. I think asking the question opens up and invites possibilities. So, one of the refrains that my daughter and I have been practicing is, "How can it get any better than this? What is the possibility, like,
Hmm.
any better opportunity, any better thing to come up?" And another question that I've been asking is, like, what is the, what is the thing that I may be missing in this situation that would allow me to release the feelings around it, that would allow me to create positive change, like just continually asking and inviting the opportunities of what you may not be seeing, identifying, how is this working out for me? And immediately that dispels things. I would say the other thing that's been really helpful for me too is asking or just noting in your mind, that's an interesting point of view. Because that removes the judgment again. And then what I'm seeing happening is the like other people around are going to say things, they're going to have opinions, they're going to have judgments. And what I've started saying is, that's an interesting point of view that they have that point of view. So
Mhm.
it's not attaching myself to any of it. And instead, it's the allowing. I think one of the great experiences that I've also been practicing in my meditations is like the universe is filled with expansion, chaos, out of controlness. And so you to like be fully aware is to allow for all of the things to happen. And so it's to allow for the good and the bad, the right and the wrong, all of that, and to allow it without judgment. And instead, just to hold the space for allowance and then ask the next question. So I feel like that's given me a lot of peace. It's given me a lot of like freedom, and then non attachment so that I can make better choices and decisions, not based on the stories that are running and that I have patterned, but like
Yeah.
what else is possible.
Mm, mm, love that. The curiosity point is just so applicable in almost
Mhm.
in so many situations. And we don't need to attach ourselves to the narratives that people put out there.
Yeah.
It's very liberating. I want to give one shout out to well, two shout outs actually. In thinking about like how we met, the people that have influenced you a lot. We met through the Authentic Asian, which is an incredible network of Asian women and femmes and
Yeah.
non-binary and gender nonconforming and trans people, and it's like been the best.
Yes.
But Misa Chen, who created the Authentic Asian, is like eh,
Yeah.
everybody kind of orbits Misa. But yeah, tell me more about other people who inspire you, who mentor you.
Um, I have been pleasantly and happily surprised with the white men in my life who have shown up and become advocates and really had an opportunity to reflect upon the roles that they can take to do the right thing, and actively reaching out to me to, ask and support. And so I think that sense of inclusivity that we want to talk about, like, it extends in all ways. And I think
Yeah.
for these people who understand that privilege and power is often, given to them pretty easily, what can they do about that? And then their mindfulness around that has been really, really great. I love Misa Chen. She's been so, the name of her organization is The Authentic Asian, and she's been through and through so authentic. There is no sense of ego about what she's doing at all. She just wants
Yeah.
to support and amplify. And that's been amazing. And I just love, I would say my friend Nicole Smith, she's been in the, like, she doesn't like to call it like DEI. She just wants to call it like, social change and like equity and leadership.
Totally.
Her the ways that she's shown up in the world, and she talks about this too, is like, she has a son who was transgender, and then they navigated that whole journey with him, and like, her raising two Black boys and her relationship with her husband and how they've been together for decades and like what that's taken. And I just love hearing all of that, and just the ways that she's showing up. So yeah.
Amazing.
And then the two co-hosts of the Dear White Women podcast, who are also in, Misasha is in TAA, and like, yeah, amazing what they're doing. I mean, they're both biracial, raising multiracial children, and yeah, so that's been amazing too.
Yeah, Dear White Women podcast is excellent. Okay, so here's Judy's website, judytsuei.com. Find Judy on LinkedIn, and then also your podcast.
Oh yeah.
So people, there's lots of resources here. Judy, I want to thank you so much for your time, and we could, like, this could go on for like another hour and a half.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for being here. We will see you all in 2 weeks back on Everyday Equity, Everyday Ways to Make a Change. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.